Conker's Bad Fur Day. Released March 5th, 2001. Developed by Rareware. Early stages of its development showed signs of the game being nothing more than a child-friendly platformer, at the time known simply as 12 Tales Conker 64. Nearing the end of its development, it was deemed too similar to many of the other platforming adventure games being released. Thereafter it lay dormant. That is, until Chris Seavor brought forward the idea of reworking the game into the alcohol-infused, foul-mouthed debauchery we received instead.
It was a standard Nintendo character. Squeaked, jumped, took the initiative, and I came up with an idea that I thought might work.
Due to the game being barely marketed and releasing towards the end of the Nintendo 64's life cycle, Conker's Bad Fur Day underperformed in sales and was considered a commercial flop. But poor sales doesn't necessarily mean a game is bad. There's lots of games like Enslaved, Odyssey to the West, or Psychonauts that didn't sell well but have outstanding stories and gameplay. Furthermore, Conker's Bad Fur Day is considered by many to be an absolute classic and a staple of the Nintendo 64. So let's take an in-depth look at the story, the gameplay mechanics, and the humor of it all and see for ourselves. A few things before we get started. I'll be playing the Rare Replay Xbox One version of the game. In my experience, it's essentially no different from the 64 version, other than it having a cleaner resolution, faster load times, and a smoother frame rate overall. The only downside is that the game is missing the iconic intro of Conker chainsawing the Nintendo 64 logo in half. I also won't really be mentioning the remake, 2005's Conker Live and Reloaded, as in my opinion it's the inferior version, and it's really not worth bringing up. Instead, I'm focusing solely on the original release. So let's get started, shall we?
Marvelous.
Right away, we are greeted by an interactive menu that just oozes charm. It's set in Conker's favorite bar, the Cock and Plucker. It's a very creative way to lay out your options while giving you a small taste of the kind of humor and atmosphere that is to come. We select our save file and begin the journey. The game begins with a slowly zooming out shot of our protagonist Conker sitting atop his throne, with a crown on his head, drinking a glass of milk, clearly a parody of Clockwork Orange. This game is full of movie parodies, and I'll do my best to point them out as we come across them. Conker begins to tell us his story of how he came to be on the throne in the first place, which begins with him at the bar drinking with his other squirrel pals before they head off to, in his words, some war somewhere. He calls his girlfriend Barry to tell her that he's going to be late coming home. After a long night of partying, he stumbles his way out of the bar, pisses off the local monk, and makes his way, seemingly the wrong way, home. We then meet our main antagonist, the Fairy Panther King, sitting on the same throne we just saw Conker on. His milk has spilt off the table and this seems to upset him quite a lot. I guess we'll see more of him later. We then cut back to Conker, who is waking up the next morning hungover in a strange field, and we're finally given control to start the adventure. Right away, it's funny to me that Conker moves at a snail's pace. It's the polar opposite of something like Mario 64, where you're given free rein to jump around and experiment straight out of the gate. There's a lot of moments where this game subverts your typical gaming tropes, and that's really part of Conker's charm. So we meander our way around the fence where we find an anthropomorphic scarecrow named Birdie.
Beardy? You haven't got a beard.
No. Birdie. I scare birdies.
He explains one of the core mechanics of the game to us, the context-sensitive B button. Essentially, when there's a B button, like the one on the ground nearby, Conker will produce an item that is needed in that very moment. So after supplying Birdie with enough illicit substances to make him pass out, we head through the gate, pop a quick Alka-Seltzer, and alleviate Conker's hangover symptoms. Just like that, we're good as new. And now we can move like a real platform game character. We take a quick swim towards the waterfall where we are introduced to another core game mechanic, Conker's helicopter-y tail thing. I do appreciate when a game doesn't straight up tell you how to do things and lets you figure them out on your own by experimentation, but this game is very story-driven, so Conker telling the player exactly how to perform the maneuver isn't really a big deal. After crossing the gap, we make our way upwards towards the bridge where we meet an ill-tempered gargoyle. He says he's just got comfortable and he's not moving. And he's a little bit of a dick. So we head back and pull a lever to open a door further down. Once we head inside, Conker then explains his standard attack, a frying pan that he seems to pull from his ass to whack anything in front of him. The game wants to make sure you know how to use it, so before we proceed we bludgeon an innocent key, pick it up, and use it to unlock the door. We then head back up and give the gargoyle a good old smack with it. He laughs at us for thinking that will work,
A frying pan.
but falls off the bridge to his death like a dumbass. I like how they set up the gargoyle to seem like he was going to be this big imposing boss, when he was really nothing more than a roadblock. Something tells me that'll be a common theme going forward. A boulder then blocks the way, but after using another context-sensitive B button to produce a plunger and dynamite, we blow it to smithereens and proceed on our way. First chapter completed. I think Hungover does a pretty decent job of setting the tone for the game, while simultaneously teaching the player the core game mechanics. But it can be a bit of a slog on repeat playthroughs, luckily it's not a very long section. And it's cutscene time. We meet the eccentric and legless Professor von Krippelsbach. The Fairy Panther King explains to him that his milk keeps spilling due to his busted table, and that the professor must find a way to fix it, or else he will get the duct tape out again.
I will be as quick as I can, sir.
Because we know what happened last time.
On it well, on it well. I'll go now.
I don't want to have to get the duct tape out again.
Yes. Wait, no. I don't want you to get the duct tape out again.
I just love that joke because there's clearly a history of the duct tape coming out and it not being a pleasant experience, while we're simply left to wonder what he could possibly be doing with the duct tape. We're then shown that the professor does not think too highly of the king.
Stupid. All I do all day is trying to sort his stupid problems out of the asshole.
He's a little sick of his shit, and an absolutely hilarious but nonsensical explanation for the anti-gravity chocolate that will be used as Conker's health. Which is ironic because in real life, just like dogs, chocolate can kill squirrels. So we're back to Conker, and we're now in the main hub windmill area. We head over and meet a queen bee, whose hive has been stolen by the local wasps, and Conker makes some jokes that may not have worked as well today. We then make our way around the path, and I can't help but notice, as I cut across the grass, that Conker slows down considerably. Once at the top, we grab the hive, but immediately the wasps are in hot pursuit.
Hey, some wise guy's trying to steal our nice new hive.
Let's go get it.
Yeah, let's get him.
We hustle on down the hill, making sure to stick to the path, remembering that the game already showed us how much the grass slowed us down. And in no time, the hive is returned to the queen bee, where it transforms into a turret. She hops in and proceeds to
Light the fuckers up!
and we receive our first cash reward. Cash is the main collectible and is needed to progress through the game. So with a few bucks in Conker's pocket, we head across a small bridge where we again meet Birdie. I guess he recovered from the coma we put him in earlier. He wants some money to sell us a manual that we can use to learn how to operate a slingshot. He also makes a reference here to Full Metal Jacket.
$10. Long time. You love manual long time.
$10 each. Me love you long time.
So we oblige him, and he goes on his way. But his gas proves to be too much for the cash, and it comes running back to us.
Oh, get me out of here! Hey, you! Come here! Come on! I want to go back in there! Okay, help me. Cash.
Good deal. We get a brief explanation and begin popping shots with the slingshot at the beetles blocking our path forward. These guys take 2 shots each, one to provoke them, and another one to explode them into chunks of bug meat. Luckily, they have very generous hitboxes, so taking them out is no problem. With them disposed of, we make our way down the next path and into the Barnboys area, and we can already tell that Conker leaves nothing but destruction in his wake. Barnboys is a large open area full of jumping metal crates, big-breasted sunflowers, and a big old barn right in the middle. We make our way over to an obnoxious farting rat named Marvin that has startled some of the local, metal crate people. We meet one named Jack, and he pleads with Conker to find some way to get rid of the rat. So we head over to his buddy Bert, who is honestly one of the funniest characters in the game. His only role is to open up the cheese gate, and he seems absolutely thrilled with it.
I'm opening the gate for you here, and you can get on me right as ever that you're trying to do.
That's all you do? Great.
Now we can pan whack some cheese and carry it all the way back over to feed Marvin, making sure to
dodge, duck, dip, dive, and die.
Under the jumping crates. We make it back, and now with Marvin fed, we...
That was nice! Ooh, I'd like another though, if that's okay.
Oh, We've got to do it 2 more times. Because of course we do. This era of games in particular seem to have an obsession with doing things in threes. Why do something once when you can extend the gameplay by doing it 3 times? It's not really an issue if the gameplay is fun, but this is literally just running back and forth trying not to get squished. Definitely not one of the game's better moments, but after the 3rd cheese has been sacrificed to the gullet of Marvin, he explodes into chunks of meat and gas.
Oh no! I think I've had too much!
The big crate hops off a jack, making a path for us to proceed to the barn roof. For some reason there's a button up here that opens the door to the front of the barn, and some more cash, which is always nice. We make our way down and into the front door of the barn, where inside we're introduced to jumping haystacks with goofy eyeballs on top of their heads. You know it's a Rareware game when there's goofy eyes on pretty much everything. Frankie the Pitchfork is coaxed by his companions to try and kick Conker's ass.
Yeah, Frankie, go and kick his ass. Go on, kick his ass.
With the logic that pitchforks kick more ass than paint buckets or brushes.
That kicks ass ain't gonna be me. I'm a brush. Now you don't kick ass.
But I'm a paint pot anyway. I'm a paint pot.
Who could argue? So we're in our first boss fight. Frankie chases us around the barn trying to stab us, but instead we lure him to kill the bouncing haystacks one by one. Honestly pretty easy, but some of the smaller haystacks can take a few tries to line up a direct hit. Once they're all destroyed, Frankie's too tired to keep fighting and admits defeat. His partners berate him for his lame attempt to kick ass, and they suggest that he kill himself.
Yeah, he sure is. So, what are you gonna do now? Kill yourself? Because that's what I recommend.
So he agrees, but upon doing so, he realizes that he does not in fact have a neck and is left to hang seemingly forever. What a fate. We're now free to pull a lever to unlock the door and leave the barn, which also opens a hatch that the king bee tumbles out of. But upon our departure, the boss haystack makes his presence known.
Time to wander around aimlessly.
Now that we're back outside, we meet the king bee, who is disheveled and down on his luck. He left the queen to pursue the big-breasted sunflower.
That bitch threw me out.
He just wants to pollinate her, I guess. So we agree to help him for the possibility of receiving more cash. We introduce ourselves to the sunflower, but are pretty much told to screw off because she's very ticklish and we have a big furry tail that looks quite tickly. So with that, we hatch a plan. We meet some pacifist bees that only want to tickle people. Time to explore the land and find all 5 groups of bees. I appreciate that you can grab multiple swarms of bees at once. They'll follow you pretty much anywhere, as long as you don't jump in the water. Once they're all gathered, we bring them back to the sunflower, where she is tickled to the point of opening herself up for the king bee to jump in and do his pollinating. And yeah, this part is a bit much, is all I'll say. Once they're all done, we could take a quick bounce on the boobies,
Now this is what I call a plot pumpkin.
and reach another stack of cash. Now it's time to explore the hatch that the king bee fell out of. Conker makes his way inside and we can see we are on the barn's rafters. There's bats that will attack us as we cross, so we have to tiptoe slowly and use a flamethrower when the bats get too close. Or you can just jump across and avoid the bats entirely. And optionally, once you reach the throwing knives at the end, you can just turn around and dispose of them. I'm not sure if the developers intended for people to do this, but I still appreciate that the objective can be completed in more than one way, and it rewards a little creativity. So now we turn our attention to Frankie, hanging there by his purty little neck. We chop his noose with a throwing knife and down he goes. After jumping back down to the floor, we're on to another boss fight, this time with the help of Frankie. Not much to this one either. The big haystack jumps around and will try to smack you, knocking you off Frankie if you get too close. The key is to strafe around to his backside and land an attack. Each successful hit will ignite him a little bit more. After 2 hits, he is revealed to be in fact a Terminator-inspired haybot.
Fuck you, asshole.
And after landing the 3rd and final blow, the haybot breaks the floor and we fall all the way down to the basement. Second phase time. All the hay has burned away, revealing the haybot's true form, and with Conker's leg conveniently injured, we have no choice but to rely on Frankie. I'll say it now, this boss fight is a bit lackluster. Another case of just doing things in threes, and an awful lot of waiting around. Hide behind the pipe, wait for him to blow it up, wait for him to jump into the water. This will electrocute him, at which point we can jump with Frankie and push the big red no-no button on the back of the haybot. Rinse and repeat this 3 times and that's the haybot done. But he didn't go down without any casualties. Frankie has been split in half, but with a quick tape job he's good as new. But then he quickly bails on us when the water starts gushing in. The water is rising quickly and there are sparking wires that will fry us up. So our objective is clear. Make our way up and cut those wires. This part is quite nerve-wracking as you are on very limited time, and with no reticle, aiming the throwing knives can be quite tricky. But we get them all cut in time and the water stops rising at a very convenient height. The exit takes us to the back of the barn, where we get launched by another pissed off monk and land squarely on another stack of cash. We then make our way outside and head up the long ladder into the sky, avoiding the wasps as they charge back and forth. Once at the top, there's anti-gravity chocolate floating suspiciously off the end of what looks to be a diving board. So we take a leap of faith and press B when the light bulb tings above our head. Conker transforms into an anvil, and down we go into a big empty bucket. I guess that's where all that water came from. This opens a gate down below. We make our way down, collect the final stack of cash for this area, and head out on our way to the next chapter. Barnboys completed. Now we're making our way towards the poo shack to make some poo, but before we do that, I take a quick detour up this ladder to an optional area. I like the fact that there are missable cutscenes in this game, which to my knowledge wasn't really a common occurrence in games from this era. This takes us to a rickety bridge in front of the Federal Reserve Bank, with lots of signs around telling us to turn back, and when we ignore the signs and try to cross the bridge anyway, it breaks and we fall down into the muck. Guess maybe we'll come back here later. Anyway, back to the poo shack. Upon entering, we trigger another cutscene. Here comes the main exposition of plot for this game. The professor has found a solution to the king's broken table. He must fill the gap where the table's leg is broken. A red squirrel is a perfect fit, and really the only logical solution. Red squirrel goes under the table, no more spilt milk, no more duct tape. The depth and complexity of this game's lore rivals Tolkien's work for sure, but honestly the absolute nonsense of it all is pretty funny.
Get me one of these red squirrels.
Yes, mighty.
Okay, time to make poo while the sun shines. An asshole beetle explains to us that if we want some poo, we need to head down into the poo shack and get some cows to crap. No idea why we would want to do any of that, but it sounds like a fun time anyway.
You still here? Oh, charming.
So we enter the poo well, I guess, and climb our way up some ropes, entering a new area with a large bull who is clearly a racist.
I don't like red. I hate red. Go away.
Whoa, taking it like red. What? I don't see anything red around. Oh. Here we go again.
The bull will attack Conker if we step onto his field, so for now we're heading up to the top of this poo ball tower and loosening the prune juice valve, filling the trough with delicious fuel for poo. Here's a fun little fact. If you jump off a high ledge in this game, you only have a small window of time while you're falling where you can hover. However, if you're above water, you can hover at any time, so this makes for a much quicker way to get back down. But if you mistime it, you will go splat. We lower the bull to ram the target, and out comes a polite British cow.
Oh, there's a nice little patch. I think I'll have a little bit of grass. Moo.
We then lure the bull to crash into the wooden wall where his horns then get stuck and Conker can mount him. The bull is a wild one and is very hard to control. Getting thrown off means you need to repeat the process of getting his horns stuck and mounting him again. This part can either be really fun or infuriating, depending on how well the bull feels like cooperating. It honestly seems like he has moods. But once we're riding this beast, we can charge into the cow, triggering her to move on to drinking some prune juice. Naturally, this makes her crap like there's no tomorrow.
Oh, it's like the screaming shit it is. I'm out of here.
Down into the grate, filling the poo well. Once she's done, we charge at her again, and she explodes into a pile of meaty chunks. Poor lady. Rinse and repeat this 2 more times, and down goes the bull.
Why am I such a fat bastard?
Now we have a full well of poo. So we make our way back, the place now filled to the brim with liquid poo. We find another B button and take some confidence pills. No more water wings, so we dive through the poo and collect some more cash on our way out. Now that we're back outside, we have an endless supply of poo balls.
Yeah, there it is. Over there's big ball of poo. Oh, thanks. You're welcome to it, mate. Yeah, thanks.
They're a lot of fun to roll around, and they roll like you're rolling an E. coli infused snowball. So we take our poo ball around the backside of the mountain and drop it right onto the head of a spiky imp. Now that he's covered in poo, he's no longer a threat. We can jump down and try to make our way onto a plunger that is inexplicably difficult to jump on. This triggers the pond to begin draining, eliminating 2 other imps that would have attacked us if we entered the water. Now that the path is clear, we can make our way through to the next chapter. Bat's Tower. Upon entering, we are greeted by a group of snobby catfish who are in need of assistance. They offer Conker 10% of their fortune in exchange for him restraining an unruly dogfish so that they can reach their vault. So we start swimming our way down the river, making sure to check out the vaguely hidden secret area behind the waterfall. There's typically an extra life here, but since we've yet to die, it doesn't spawn. But I do love that this game stuck with the if there's a waterfall, there's a secret behind it trope. So we continue on, taking a look at this dogfish and eventually diving down to enter an underwater underwater passage, which leads us to the large tower's interior. Once inside, we're verbally assaulted by a very hostile cog as he demands we get his other cogs back.
Be back, me missing cogs. Oh,
You don't have to shout.
I'm deaf.
So first things first, we need to climb this tower. And surprise, the bats are back. Just like before, we need to tiptoe our way across the beams and light the bats up with the flamethrower when they get too close. But this time, the stakes are much higher, as falling from this tower can easily result in a death. However, just like before, if you're feeling brave, you can take some risky jumps from rope to rope and skip the bats almost entirely. I like that they decided to reuse the bats in another part of the game, in a trickier scenario, while also once again giving you an option to just skip right past them. Now that we've reached the top of the tower, we'll do some very careful platforming all the way around to find yet another stack of cash. And I gotta say, I love the background at this part. You can see a lot of areas that you will encounter later in the game. The spooky mansion, the Teddy's Island, the wasp hive. It's just a cool little detail, and you can tell that a lot of care went into crafting this goofy little world. Now with the cash claimed, we can start our way back down, but not before grabbing the lever to open up another path in the water. After carefully traversing the way back down without splattering, we dive back into the water through the tunnel, making sure to avoid the spiky imps and then resurfacing. And it's here we find the first missing cog and give her a good old whack with the frying pan. After swimming our way back and placing the first cog on, we witness another scene that really didn't age too well.
Help!
Put it on, I like it like that. Oh, fan-fucking-tastic.
But I'd say that's about as bad as it gets in terms of jokes that don't sit very well today. So we get back to swimming and take 2 more trips through the tunnel to grab the other cogs. This time we need to go a little bit further down the hallway, where the cogs are a little trickier to catch. The trick is to jump instead of running, as the knee-high water in this room slows your movement down significantly. Once all 3 cogs are placed, we get a less than stellar thank you from the angry cog.
Thanks, f***head. Now go f*** off with you.
But that doesn't matter, because now that everything is back in place, we can spin the big wheel on the floor, which reels in the dogfish outside. Luckily, the lady cogs get a happy ending and go on their way while the angry cog is left in a position he deems undesirable.
Not Mr. Big Cog. That's me, buggered.
With that sorted, we head back to where we started to let the catfish squad know we are ready to receive our cash reward. The lead catfish then proceeds to taunt the dogfish
Poo-poo to you, yes, you brute.
before simply switching the safe combination from wrong to right. Something tells me Conker could have cracked that code on his own. Regardless, it's time to head into the vault and get the dough. But the cache doesn't recognize us and decides to make a run for it, down into the depths below. And with the doors and the floor locked behind him, we now must use the slingshot to spell out the word open on the spinning wheel on the wall. Again, the slingshot can be really difficult to aim with. The rule of thumb I've learned to use is that the shot is going to land in the center of the top 1/3 of the screen. But without too much hassle, we spell out the correct word and the floor opens, where another B button platform awaits us, and we use it to equip a hard hat with a mounted flashlight on it, before following the cache down into the depths. Oh boy, it's a water level. Those have always been beloved in games, no matter what the franchise. Jokes aside, this part isn't all that bad if you know where you're going, but I'm sure it could be an absolute nightmare on a first time playthrough. We start by swimming straight down, using the little cubby holes in the wall to refill our oxygen. Once Conker reaches the opening at the bottom, we swim through the green lit pipe and get chomped by the clang for good measure. Normally the light from the flashlight would scare it into shutting its eye, but the flashlight batteries run out really fast, which adds even more urgency to the situation, as if the threat of drowning wasn't enough. We resurface and replace the battery before heading back down and proceeding through the blue lit pipe. We again resurface and pull a lever, which opens up our way out of here. Now it's just a matter of going back through the green pipe, through the yellow pipe, and carefully swimming all the way back up to the surface. There's really not much to say about this section. In terms of water levels, I'd say it's pretty average. It can be stress inducing when you're swimming through a pipe and you see the clang coming towards you, or if you're running low on oxygen and you're not sure if you're going to make it. I'm just glad it's pretty short and sweet, and there aren't too many other areas of the game that require swimming. Conker now finds himself in a large boiler room where 2 imps have installed a rather large beer keg. They're smoking and joking and living it up, but they can't resist setting things on fire, Conker included.
Look at him! Very good! Looks kind of flammable! Flammable! Oh, I like flammable.
Now we're introduced to one of the most iconic game mechanics of Conker's Bad Fur Day, urination. After a hearty helping of beer, we stagger out into the opening and let it rip. The goal is to extinguish as many imps as possible via golden shower. Can't let them get too close or they'll burn you. The urine stream can be hard to control, but that seems to be a running theme with this game so far. The best method I've found is to wiggle the stick around to make the pee scatter a little bit. However, we managed to take out enough of them on the first go around, which triggers the imps to retreat into the big boiler. I feel childish for still finding this boss funny. His whole shtick is having a big set of balls, but still.
You can't deny that view.
The objective of this boss fight is straightforward. Pull a chain in the corner to dump what I'm guessing is poo onto the boiler's head. This sends him into a daze, and it gives Conker the opportunity to run forward and clap those balls with a set of bricks. Owie indeed. There can be a lot of frustration with this boss's AI. He frequently loses sight of Conker and wanders around the arena aimlessly, so you end up caught in this weird routine of trying to get his attention from a safe distance while attempting to lure him into the corner for another poo dump. However, there is a neat little speedrunner's trick that can be used to make this fight a lot more manageable. Simply put, when going in for a slap on the old balls, enter the boiler's undercarriage from the right side. After the short cutscene, he will already be faced towards the next chain that needs to be pulled. I doubt that this was intended by the devs, but it's pretty cool nonetheless. And after 4 ball beatings, the boiler goes down. It self-destructs, and we can then use his severed nuts to weigh down a pressure plate and send the other one careening down the hallway to open up our way out of here. We're back in the vault and finally have our hands on the cash. If you look closely, you can see that this stack of cash is actually $1 bills instead of the usual 10s for every other stack you find in the game. I just appreciate that they took the time to make that small change. Small details go a long way. We exit the vault and it's revealed that the 10% of the catfish's fortune equates to $1.
Give us back our money, honey, and you'll get your dollar.
What? $1?
Which is also funny considering that that stack of cash is just 10 $1 bills, so that's actually the absolute minimum they could have paid him. So Conker's had enough of their shit and pockets the cash.
$10? I thought you said it was a fortune. It is a fortune. I'll tell you what. Here's a new deal. I keep the lot. See ya.
Just in time for the dogfish to break free of its constraints and go full on jaws on these catfish. Now it's just a simple matter of swimming back up the river. There's not really a lot of challenge here. It's way easy to outrun the dog, but watching him chomp down on each one of these catfish is extremely cathartic after all we just went through. And after the grand finale, the dogfish has crashed. Conker can now use its body to reach a big haul of cash on this high ledge. With that, Bat's Tower is complete, and we're moving on to the next opportunity. We make our way back to Poo Mountain to roll some more poo balls around. God, the first half of this game really just revolves around poo, doesn't it? We make 2 trips. First one around the backside, up a short path until we're right above a beetle behemoth. Conker's a cheeky one, and he shoves a stick of dynamite into the poo, blowing the big guy to kingdom come. This clears the main path for us, so we grab another poo ball and work our way all the way up to the top. There's beetles along the way that will attack you, and sometimes inadvertently push your poo ball off the side. It's best to play it safe and just wait for them to enter their little cubby holes before passing. But once we reach the top, we drop the final poo ball down the chute and open up the entrance to Poo Mountain. But before we enter, I make sure to grab the cash from the peak of the mountain. Upon entering, we watch a funny cutscene where the beetle tells the story of what happened to his mates.
Hey, Buzzer, how you doing there, hey, mate? He waved over, and that was it. This thing came out of the shite. And I thought to myself, oh no, I'm getting out of this. So I had to hide first. And when I came out, I thought it was all clear. The lads are gone. The bastards didn't help me in.
There's something lurking below. Immediately afterwards, we encounter sweet corn.
Sweet corn.
It makes me laugh how Conker says sweet corn, like it's a buddy of his, but after hearing the wishes of the one that lurks below, it's clear that we must sacrifice sweet, sweet corn. And there's our second Jaws reference. After rinsing and repeating, sacrificing a total of 6 sweet corn, we see who has been causing all the commotion. It's the Great Mighty Pooh!
I am the Great Mighty Pooh, and I'm going to throw my shit at you.
The most notorious boss from Conker's Bad Fur Day. Not for the challenge or the difficulty, just for those beautiful singing chops. After serenading us with the first verse of his song, the Great Mighty Pooh starts throwing some Great Mighty Pooh balls. They're not really hard to dodge, and I mostly use a strategy where I just stand on the B button and I do a high jump every time he goes to throw one. It almost guarantees that you never get hit. After 6 throws, it's time to throw some TP down this guy's throat. And after a second verse, we repeat the process 2 more times. Then on to the final verse.
When I've knocked you out with all my bab, I'm going to take your head and ram it up my butt.
Your butt.
My butt.
Your butt.
That's right, my butt.
Ugh.
My butt. My butt!
Where we repeat the process, you guessed it, 3 times. With this, the boss showcases his vibrato and shatters the glass concealing the cache, and more importantly, the flusher. It's a shame to flush such a beautiful soul, but it must be done. Down he goes as he parodies the Wicked Witch from Wizard of Oz.
Squirrel, look what you've done! I'm blushing! Oh, what a world, what a world! Who'd have thought a good little squirrel like you could destroy my beautiful clagginess? Oh.
You cursed rat! Look what you've done! I'm melting! Melting! Oh, what a world! What a world! Who would have thought a good little girl like you could destroy my beautiful wickedness?
We can now access the area below the Great Mighty Pooh. So we make our way down, and upon entering the loading zone, we're greeted by another cutscene. Barry is home doing her thing, but a big Rocky boy knocks her out and kidnaps her. So now it's up to us to save her, I guess. We dive into the water, where it's time to dodge some razor blades. In my opinion, this is the hardest part of the whole game. It's insanely difficult to judge where you are relative to the blades, coupled with the fact that the swimming controls are extremely dated, and because of this I pick up my first death of the playthrough. I was hoping to keep it deathless for as long as possible, but upon dying for the first time we get to meet Greg, the underpaid short king Grim Reaper.
Aren't you a little short to be a Grim Reaper?
Too short for a stormtrooper?
Huh?
How many Grim Reapers have you met before, mate? What am I supposed to look like?
Yeah, that's a good point. Well made.
He explains that much like cats, squirrels can have extra lives as long as they have a tail to trade. Essentially, we can now find tails hidden throughout the world, and those act as our lives. This game is goofy for sure, but it was really ahead of its time in a lot of ways. I might be wrong, but I can't think of any other games that released around this time that attempted to make respawning part of the world's lore. Anyway, we're sent back to the world of the living to try again, and this time we make it past the blades unscathed, climbing up and out to safety. The blades can be a really frustrating section, but luckily the devs realized this and put an extra life that spawns right next to where you respawn upon death. Therefore, you can freely attempt to cross the blades as many times as it takes, without incurring a game over. Here we meet 2 weasels who have been standing guard collecting tolls and waiting for a red squirrel to come through to fulfill their mission. But Conker is a smooth talker and convinces them that he is indeed an elephant and not a squirrel.
I tell you, I'm not a squirrel.
Get your hands off me. What are you then?
I'm an elephant. Squirrels aren't short and furry. They're big and grey.
While also getting back his precious cash. This area simply serves as a roadblock to make sure you've collected all the cash up to this point, which we have, so we move right along. We've made it to Uga Buga, the caveman world. After making our way up the mini raptor pyramid and collecting the cash at the top, we anvil our way down to the land below. There's a bunch of rowdy Rocky boys shooting the shit outside the nightclub, and they do not hesitate to attack. But luckily one of them is passed out, so we can roll his unconscious body across the room to open up another area, killing 2 innocents in the process. Like I said, Conker leaves destruction in his wake. We enter the new area and are greeted by a very dramatic giant stone lizard head, oozing snot. Interesting. There's nothing really to do in here for now, so we just proceed to the next room and sit Conker on top of a giant dinosaur egg. Underneath the warmth of Conker's cushy buns, the egg hatches and we're the proud new mother of this thing.
The dumbest motherfucker that ever lived.
Yeah, that's right. I'm your mummy. Come on, follow me.
Oh, good.
Our new baby follows us along and eats the cavemen along the way. I remember finding this part frustrating in the past, as the dinosaur is prone to losing sight of Conker and just kind of standing around like a goon. But as long as you take it pretty slow, the baby dino does a decent job of keeping it moving.
Keep it moving, guy!
Once we get our little baby back into the main chamber, we use the slingshot to hit the button that lifts the big stone slab. And after wrangling the baby away from his caveman snacks, it's time to say goodbye.
This is gonna be interesting.
God, it's so messed up and so hilarious at the same time. Just a short, sad life for that little baby dino. But with the sacrifice made, the lizard god is pleased and rolls out his tongue. Out slides a monk for some reason, but again we use his slab to launch ourselves onto the top of the statue, where we grab some cash, an extra life, and sprinkle a bit of pepper into both of the statue's nostrils. We now may enter his throat. We work our way past his uvulas, and out the other side where we claim the headgear of a fallen caveman.
Yeah, it kind of suits me.
Even though it looks identical to the rest of the cavemen's headwear, they now accept Conker as their lord and savior.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, I know, great. I know.
The cavemen agree to help clobber the rowdy Rocky Boys, so we slowly escort the group all the way up the hill to the entrance of the Rock Solid nightclub, where it's
stoner bashing time.
The cavemen make pretty quick work of them. It seems to help if you stand off to the opposite side of one of the rock guys and whack them with your pan. Once they're all dead, we've shown our strength and we can enter the club. I wouldn't call this section particularly fun, amusing for sure, but it's mostly just a means of getting to the next spectacle rather than being a standout moment. It is a lot of fun having a gang of cavemen fighting alongside you, and it would have been interesting to see that play out for a bit longer. We're in the club, cruising for hotties, dancing with the homies, and most importantly, we're rolling rock dudes around in an attempt to rescue Barry, who is locked in a cage. We roll the first rock dude across the dance floor and up the ramp onto the pressure plate, which causes the middle door to open. Once again, it's time to get drunk and do some pissing. When Conker's drunk, his movement is always sort of a gamble. Sometimes he'll quickly stumble forward, and sometimes he'll just stop and try to regain his balance. These animations seem to happen at random, but it can really change how quickly you're able to get yourself into position. And with time being limited while you're intoxicated, it can be a little bit annoying. But once we get into a good spot, it's time to whip it out and piss this rock dude down the center hole. Then we mosey on over to the soberizer box and sober up. We jump down the center hole and push our victim all the way across the top, avoiding the dancing ladies and onto another pressure plate. Now with the other two doors open, we repeat the process. Get drunk, piss him down the hole. Get drunk, piss him down the other hole. And that's the final blow needed to break Barry's cage open. Newly liberated, Barry quickly jumps down and heads towards the exit, not at all recognizing Conker due to his caveman headdress. But seeing as how he still looks exactly like Conker, it's safe to assume that she is simply stupid. Regardless, we climb up to her cage and grab some cash, and make our way towards the door. But we don't make it very far, as the bouncer doesn't take kindly to Conker walking off with the cash.
Where do you think you're going with that?
What?
The money.
Oh, I'm following her.
I don't think so. I think you need to see the boss.
Okay.
So I guess it's time to go see the boss. The boss is an obvious parody of The Godfather. Conker walks in just in time to see Don Weezo execute one of his cronies that has been less than loyal. We're then tasked with carrying an active bomb to the heart of the caveman world.
Take the bomb and drop it here. By the way, when that bomb goes off, I suggest you leave town. And if you don't pull it off, I suggest you leave town. Let's go to work.
This part of the game is super tight on the timing. A few wrong moves and you will for sure blow to bits. But otherwise, if you know the way and take a clean path, it's pretty easy. After I nearly drown myself in lava, we proceed outside to get mugged by the locals. I thought they were my friends. But no, they want to race on the hoverboards, so let's jump on and get to it. Again, like the razor blades, this part is extremely difficult, and this time we don't have a spare tail to pick up in case we die a few times. The controls are very touchy, it's easy to oversteer and crash into a wall or a dinosaur foot, and if it's a hard enough crash, you die instantly. But luckily we're able to race around the track a few times and take out all three cavemen on our first try. Then we jump up the ramp, grab another stack of cash, and come crashing into the Coliseum. The Coliseum is just so much fun. Conker obviously enjoys the attention from the people he thinks are there to see him.
Hey, yeah, I know, I'm great. Yeah, hey.
But very quickly we see that this place was built for bloodshed. The giant caveman brings out a raptor, which we lure over to a B-button platform in the center, and give him a little taste of hypnosis. Right away, the raptor controls like a dream when compared to the unruly bull from earlier. He definitely still has a mind of his own, and on occasion he won't listen to Conker's commands if there's a caveman nearby that he wants to chase. But otherwise, the raptor controls very fluidly. Now it's just a matter of killing all these cavemen to please the crowd. The easiest way to do so is to run at them and ram them off the ledge and into the lava. At first it's not too difficult, but there's several waves, and the cavemen eventually up their tactics to throwing projectiles. But as long as you keep them separated and pick them off one at a time, it's no big deal. The giant caveman's not happy with what we've done, so he jumps down to sort us out himself.
Oh my giddy aunt, this is not good.
It's another case of doing something 3 times. Keeping a bit of distance, we avoid the shockwaves from his jumps, and lure him to charge up his bone attack. Then we bite his balls, run around to his backside, and take a hearty chunk out of them buns. Rinse and repeat 2 more times, and down goes the giant caveman, exposing the world to his teensy weensy willy.
Big boner, my ass.
It's a fun fight, but if you know what you're doing, it's over in no time. It's really more about the humor of the situation than it is compelling gameplay. After saying a sweet goodbye to our raptor companion, it's time to go meet Jugga. She's Conker's dream girl, for reasons that are obvious.
Paradise.
But she tells Conker it just won't work for them, and sadly sends him on his way.
You go. You go.
Bye-bye then.
I love you always.
Bye-bye. Oh well.
We continue on, collect some more cash, and exit Uga Buga. Another chapter completed. Once we're back in the windmill area, we see that the queen bee's hive has once again been kidnapped by the wasps. Conker does some quick extortion, raising the reward price this time up to $400, and we head back up to the wasp den. This time we're going a bit further. We go all the way inside where we find the queen's hive acting like a mounted machine gun turret. So Conker jumps in and it's time to take out waves and waves of wasps. And God is it difficult with these aiming controls. For one, the controls are inverted, with no way to switch them, and the sensitivity is just off the charts. The best method I've found to eliminate the wasps effectively is to strafe the reticle back and forth over your target and just pray that a shot lands. It's also important to watch the blips on the radar. If one turns red, that means the wasp is coming in for an attack and needs to be eliminated immediately, but luckily we get through this shooting section without too much hassle. So it's time to return the hive. Same thing as last time, just a little bit further. And with that, the queen bee has her hive back, and again, she makes the bastards pay. This time with missiles. Now we head up the winding road to the windmill, very gingerly, taking great care to avoid the carnivorous worms that make their home along the path. Once at the top, we begrudgingly pay the barrel man to go for a ride.
Alright, yeah.
We're heading right back down from where we came, squashing all those bastards in the process. But the barrel goes flying and Conker is knocked out cold. Upon awakening, we enter the next chapter. Spooky! And I gotta tell you, I hate this chapter. I mean, I love this chapter, but I hate this chapter. It absolutely terrified me as a kid. And I don't know if that's just those childhood feelings sticking with me, or if it really is that scary. But this part just gets to me. So again, we meet Greg. He's having a good time, spawn-killing catfish.
Mr. Again. I got your number, mate. It's down to 2 for you.
We pull a lever, which opens the big door, and Greg blesses us with a pump-action shotgun.
So I've got this. I hate the undead. Hate them. The only thing that kills them. Shot to the head. Nothing more, nothing less.
This is the point where I feel the game takes a major shift from cartoony platformer to just an all-out shooter with some platforming elements sprinkled in. We enter the graveyard and are immediately met with the terrifying zombie squirrels of my nightmares. The only way I've found to effectively manage this part is to jump on one of the headstones and take them out one by one with headshots. It would have been nice if there was a better way for Conker to move and shoot simultaneously, but unfortunately that was a limitation of the media at the time. Conker can move while aiming, but it's nothing more than a slow strafe. After dispatching loads of undead, Greg appears and opens the door for us, and we proceed on our way. The deadly worms are back, but this time they're undead as well. They can get Conker from a pretty decent distance, and if you're unlucky they'll throw him straight to his death, so I take this path very slowly and carefully. And eventually we make it all the way up to the top and into the spooky mansion. And it's time for a Dracula parody. Conker's great-great-great-great-great-grandfather invites us in for a nice meal and some red wine. The jokes here are top-notch, from Conker pointing out the odd significance of being invited to cross a threshold.
Okay, I'll just cross this threshold here. I'm sure that's of some significance. I don't think what it is. Anyway, My hairdo.
to him being an absolute savage and roasting his ancestors.
Yeah, and he had really stupid teeth as well. Didn't they have any dentists back then?
His grandfather has big plans in store and turns Conker into a vampire bat, and it's time to feed that old man.
These little villagers occasionally pop up to my establishment to have a little fun and see if they can kill me. They have the grinder and they have the pumps. It is your duty is to fetch me the villagers, put them in the grinder, and let me feed. You may feed too if you wish, but only later. Oh yes, I forgot. You can only speak like what you are. A bat.
So we fly around the castle, finding pesky villagers to poop on, kidnap, and drop into the grinders, so that he may feed upon their blood. It's interesting to note that towards the beginning of the game, they stop to explain everything in detail, every new mechanic. But here they turn Conker into a bat and they just kinda set you on your way to figure it out on your own, which I appreciate, honestly. It's not like it's that hard to figure out how to fly, but it's just a noticeable shift from the first half of the game. The main trick to this part is finding villagers that are off by themselves. They can throw spears, so trying to pick one up in a group will just leave Conker vulnerable to taking damage. After dropping numerous villagers to their doom, the vampire has become too engorged, the rope snaps, and he falls to his death. Rest in pieces, I guess, but he kinda had it coming. Conker then returns to normal, and it's time for some more zombies. We need to escape this place, and to do so we must unlock the front door with 3 keys. Because of course there's 3. What kind of door takes 3 keys? This zombie part is trickier than the cemetery. You don't always have the advantage of having a platform to stand on, so making every shot count is extremely important. There's also bats that need to be taken out in certain areas, but again I have to praise the generous hitboxes and quick reload time for that crossbow. After clearing a path through the undead, we managed to grab the first 2 keys. Now we head back up to the top and pull another lever which opens up the path we need to take with the 3rd and final key. After a few jumps, a short walk, the 3rd key is in and we're out of this hellhole. And we're back on Mr. Barrel. He's gonna get us home. Well, maybe not home precisely, but someplace that isn't here. The controls here are very janky. Mr. Barrel turns on a dime, and upon exiting the mansion, the camera does this funky 180, which causes me to immediately fall to my death. Feels a little bit cheap. The trick is to take the first part slow, and eventually gravity will take over. He'll keep rolling forward on his own down the treacherous hill, and all you have to do is steer. From there we can make it all the way back through the cemetery and up the cascading river. We grab another stack of cash, and we get this really cool Dark Souls moment when you realize that this path led you right back to the start. I love when developers design worlds like this. The sense of wonder and joy you feel when you come back to a familiar place is really something special. So we pay Birdie a quick visit and make our way back up. I decided to pop into the room where we learned how to use the frying pan to see if anything had changed, but it was just still that lone key jumping around like before. I feel like they missed a good opportunity for a joke, like the key is sound asleep tucked into bed, or maybe you walk in, he's having an argument with his key wife. Upon coming back into the windmill area, we see a cutscene telling us it's time to go to war.
We are fighting an enemy like we have never encountered before. They are evil beyond reproach.
But only now do I realize we almost forgot to pick up 1 stack of cash by the wasp hive, so we quickly pick that up and head into the military bunker. We get a short cutscene where we see a couple of idiot squirrels asleep behind the wheel of a plane. It comes crashing down, blocking the way to the war. So the sergeant shows up to roast Conker's fashion and give us our first assignment.
Clear the way!
The first step is to get the power back online. As the sergeant explains,
there's an electric eel in there and some things. I leave it up to you.
It's easy enough. We just need to dive down and swim through the power nodes. I try to get them all in one shot, but the eel missed the middle one, so we have to go back down and try once more. That is literally just the eel from The Little Mermaid. Now that the power is back, we can use the B button on the center platform to equip a slingshot with flaming shots. But first it's time to visit the restroom. Inside, there's this strange creature with TNT strapped to its back. We give him a helping hand and carefully navigate him through a minefield. It's important to take this part slow, as these mines have a tendency to go off quite easily, but sticking mainly to the middle of the path, we make it all the way through on our first try.
I'll get it here.
Once we have this ugly bastard in position, we head back to the slingshot and light him up. Now we just repeat the process on the other side. This side is quite a bit easier in my opinion. Just time your pushes and stick behind the jumping crates on the left. You've got a generous amount of time to make it under the dropping crates, so with the second creature waiting to be sacrificed, we head back once more to the slingshot and light the fuse on our first shot. We've cleared the way. Again, not a super fun or memorable section of the game, more just a means of progressing to something better. So we go visit the sergeant, who pulls a dick move and knocks Conker unconscious.
Okay, I've done what you asked.
Well done, soldier. What the hell's that?
And we wake up to full-on Saving Private Ryan. Honestly, this is pretty much a shot-for-shot recreation of the D-Day scene from that movie. It seems like a very large part of this game's development went solely into the It's War chapter. And it's incredible. I guess it's time to get up that beach. The object here is to use the barricades along the beach to shield yourself from the incoming machine gun fire, and then move forward while the teddies reload. But again, if you're a little bit crafty, you can just crawl your way under some of the barbed wire and take a little shortcut. Conker then meets an ally and learns about the teddy scum.
What's going on here?
Teddies everywhere. This is the last assault. It's not looking good. Teddies. I hate these guys.
And decides it's time to equip himself properly. With 2 Uzis and a fat stogie, we bust the lock and head into their fortress. Now, anyone who's played Conker's Bad Fur Day can tell you that the standout chapter most definitely is It's War, and that's most certainly true. But what's also most certainly true is that in terms of gameplay, this section has aged the most poorly. But that's solely due to the one-stick aiming mechanics of the Nintendo 64. But it's teddy blasting time, and with that comes an insane spike in difficulty from this point forward. We cautiously press forward down the hallway, taking out tons of teddies along the way. There are lasers in our way that will hurt you if you touch them, and I can't really say I'm a huge fan of them. It causes a strange disconnect where you have to put your guns away, try to time your jump properly to avoid the lasers, and usually just as you land on the other side, you're being surrounded by more enemies. So then you have to quickly re-equip the guns and awkwardly readjust your aim to take them out. I mean, sure, this causes a little bit of chaotic fun, but it can turn to frustration pretty quickly. Otherwise, this section is great. You learn to watch the ceilings and corners as teddies will drop through the vents or pop out around the walls. It keeps you on edge and is totally engaging. So after making our way down the elevator, past the flamethrowers, and even more teddies, we finally reach the doctor's office, one of the funniest cutscenes in the game, where the characters completely break the fourth wall.
What if you were to give this game to, say, 20 intelligent people? I mean, what would that do? Let's face it, what would it do?
Really? That's interesting.
What the f*** is that bloody squirrel? Quick, into character!
There's teddies coming out of the cabinets and the walls, trying to make their way towards Conker to shank him with scalpels, but this part is actually really refreshing from the previous chaos in the hallways. It's much more open, and the most effective method of dispatching the enemies is to just stay put and take them out as they come to you. Once they're all dead, we move on and meet a very unfortunate soldier in a dire situation.
I think it's that switch over there. But be careful. I think the other one is, frying tonight.
No matter which lever you decide to pull, this dude gets zapped, so we have a good laugh at his expense, and continue on. We're now face to face with a teddy on a mounted machine gun. We slowly advance behind cover in between his reloads. Conker climbs up and across the platform to reach a vantage point where he can take the teddy out with a bazooka. And now it's our turn on the machine gun. There's waves and waves of teddies coming down 2 separate hallways. Just like the wasp's nest, these guys are hard to hit. Sometimes it feels like your bullets are just going straight through them and doing nothing. It's funny to me that the teddies are all carrying guns, but they seem so much more eager to just run up and stab you with their bayonet. Maybe ammo is a premium on Teddy Island. Once they're all cleared out, we press forward. We take a quick peek at their master plan, and then head outside to save Private Rodent. Rodent is about to be executed. Luckily, he's wearing a suit of impenetrable armor. That is going to come in handy for us real quick. So we gun down his attackers and start making our way through the trenches, being sure to avoid the falling bombs and hiding behind him when the spider mines approach. Much like escorting the baby dinosaur, it's best just to take this part slow to ensure that Rodent continues to follow without losing sight of Conker. But we very quickly make it through. And now for some absolute bullshit.
This is total bullshit.
We jump on a raft and equip a bazooka. We have to blow all 4 locks off this giant door in order to open it and progress. However, each lock we break triggers more teddies to come parachuting down to the ground. And for some reason, their accuracy in this section is cranked way up, all the while shooting with the bazooka is relatively slow. It's almost a guarantee to pick up another death here, which we do, but luckily, once the door has been opened, it stays that way. So after respawning, we can make a quick run for it. And now it's tank time. Well, almost. First, we blast open the door to the chemical plant. It's nothing but a long curved hallway with a few pools of green slime to jump over and some spider mines to dodge for good measure. Once we reach the back, Conker pulls a lever and opens the door outside, but this also triggers a flood of toxic chemicals. So it's a race against the clock to get out of here. Easy enough, just haul ass back and jump the chemical pools. I have to ask though, who would program a lever that functions both to open a door and flood the area with chemicals? It just makes no sense. So now it's tank time. This thing takes a little getting used to. It operates a lot like Mr. Barrel, turns on a dime but can easily glide out of control and off a cliff. We just have to watch the big turret up above and lower the bridges when we're not under fire. All the while, blowing the supports off the tower and taking out teddies as they spawn. The teddies here move so strangely. They stick their hands out like they're miming, like they're pushing against an invisible wall. Maybe they're testing the wind before they throw a grenade? I don't know, but I just found it strange enough to point out. After the tower's been destroyed, we head further down into the abyss. Down here we find an innocent little girl in need of some help. There are small submarines in the water that we need to eliminate with the bazooka. This section is infuriating, full stop. You have to stand on this B button platform in order to use the bazooka, but usually by the time you've equipped it and lined up a shot, the submarine has fired a missile, which means you have about 3 seconds to get out of there or take a hit. And remember all those times that I praised this game for having generous hitboxes? Yeah, not here by a long shot. There is no rhyme or reason for when a shot lands on these things. Sometimes a bazooka shot will go right through them, and sometimes a shot nowhere near them blows them up. It's an absolute nightmare. Luckily, after a few minutes, we eliminate all of them and can return to rescue the little girl. But she's not what she seems, and she goes full-on exorcist.
What? I don't have a daughter.
It's time for another boss. But this guy is so easy, it's honestly a joke. We jump back in the tank and get ready. After a cutscene where the girl explains the monstrosity's weaponry, we simply blow both the weapons off before she can even take a shot. Then at the opportune moment, we take a shot at the girl, and when the behemoth turns around to pick her up, a quick shot into his weak spot. Rinse and repeat.
Inverted magneto laser with a 6-pronged attack. Guided, with multiple warheads, of course. Don't fancy your chances very much, Mr. Squirrel.
And down he goes. She's not happy with how quickly we wrecked her baby, so she blows up the tank and takes our buddy Rodent with it. But there's no time for grief because it's countdown to self-destruct.
Lovely countdown. I wonder what's going to happen now.
We backtrack through the tunnels, taking out a few more waves of teddies until we can head back out to the beach. We repeat our little trick of crawling under the barbed wire, and we are out of the war zone and done with another chapter. The countdown is definitely stressful, but you do have plenty of time to get out. Just gotta stay calm and collected.
Oh my giddy up! Snipers!
Get out of here now! Come on, let's go!
We're We're then treated to an unusually emotional cutscene as the boat sails away, where the sergeant discusses the horrors of war.
All these fine young men sent off to do the dying. Those bigwigs, those pen pushers, those guys who never ever see a single bullet whiz past their heads. We want to get them down here. Those so-called generals in their big, fancy houses, 20 miles behind enemy lines. Who are they to tell us? Who are they indeed? Look at that. What a sight.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
The horror. The horror.
It's funny that this game about squirrels and alcohol can hit such emotional waves when it wants to.
Recognize that voice? It's Rhoda. He made it, guys. Yeah.
Well, we're a war hero now, I guess. We return to the main hub area to find the windmill has been demolished, and the queen bee is dead under the wreckage. It's so messed up and hilarious at the same time. What a day for her. Hive stolen twice, swindled out of $500, and then unceremoniously crushed to death by a falling concrete. Oh well. We make our way to the top where the windmill once stood to find Rodent is alive and well. We say our goodbyes and make our way through the door down below. Finally, we're back at the rickety bridge, but this time, we're on the other side of it. And it's the final chapter. We again meet Don Weezo, as well as Barry finally, and agree to help him rob the bank. Upon entering, we get another cutscene that is a nearly shot-for-shot remake of the movie it's parodying. This time, it's The Matrix.
Please place any metallic objects in the trick.
Getting through this section is pretty straightforward. Hide behind the pillars and press B to do a 6 slow-mo matrix jump to take out the guards. I always find it fun to try to hit every guard in one jump. There's 2 waves of guard at each pillar, and they must all be eliminated before moving forward. Some more Matrix-inspired cutscenes play out, and eventually we make it to the vault. Barry makes quick work of the security system, and we're in. Conker grabs all the money he can, and finally we've reached millionaire status.
Oh, cool. Millionaire!
But Conker's happiness is short-lived because we've reached the end game, and shit is about to get very real.
Conker, honey.
Oh, easy come, easy go.
The Fairy Panther King is here, and he wants Conker. He commands Don Weezo to take care of Barry, and we see the end of Conker's beloved girlfriend.
Get rid of her. Easiest thing in the world. Sorry, dollface. Business is business. Adios.
What the? Hey, mind where you... Barry? Hey, Barry. Oh no.
But it's plot twist time. The real bad guy was the professor. He planted a chest burster inside the king and it comes exploding out from inside of him, killing the king in the process. It just makes me laugh that all that build-up for the Panther King to be this big bad guy gets thrown away and he ends up being nothing more than the vessel harboring the true final boss. So we're taken into space and the professor gets a healthy dose of karma.
Warning. Airlock open. Air pressure compromised.
Oh no! What the... Oh, I forgot about the airlock! Oh shit! What the... Oh, what the... I didn't put the high-powered boosters on my chair! I knew I should have done that! Oh, I know that the noise is fine! Oh, it was fine! Shit! This is bad! No legs! And now no life! Ah!
Now all that's left to do is deal with the alien, which is parodying Alien. That one seemed obvious, but still, I said I would call them out as I see them. We grab the mech suit and it's final boss time. We're going toe to toe with this monster. He has two main attacks, the tail sweep that you need to jump over, and the bite that you need to block. The real key to the fight is learning to read which move is coming. It's just a matter of smacking him up with a tasty combo and heading around to grab his tail afterwards. We give the alien a few spins and release him at the right time to throw him out of the airlock. And of course, we must do this 3 times. But after the 3rd throw, we have officially beaten Conker's Bad Fur Day. And this game certainly has a unique ending. The game locks up right before Conker is mauled by the alien. Conker is aware of this and is able to contact one of the software testing engineers working on the game.
Hello? If there are any software engineers that can hear me, just, type something in. Alright, yeah, hello.
The engineer begrudgingly helps him, giving him all the weapons he wants in another Matrix-style parody, and then takes him to a more pleasant environment, the throne room, as he requests. Conker then has the engineer unlock the game and dispatches the alien for good.
3, 2, 1, and action.
It's at this time the people demand Conker sit on the throne and become the new king.
Come on, Conker. Up on the throne with you.
He realizes too late that he should have wished Barry back to life and is now stuck being a miserable king, surrounded by people he can't stand. He's got all the money and all the land he could want, but it just won't fill the hole left behind from what he's lost.
So, there I am. King. King of all the land. And who'd have thought that? Not me. I guess you know who these guys are now? 'Cause I certainly do. I don't want to know them. And yep, I may be king. I have all the money in the world. And all the land. And all that stuff. But you know, I don't really think I want it. I just want to go home. With Barry. And, I don't know, have a bottle of beer. It's not gonna happen. It's true what they say. The grass is always greener. And you don't really know what it is you have until it's gone. Gone. Gone.
And whew, that is a bittersweet ending. That ending has stuck with me for years. It's rough seeing a character that you've grown so fond of being stuck in such a miserable situation. But Conker was and is a selfish squirrel, and ultimately that's what comes to bite him in the ass. After the credits, we get one more cutscene where Conker drinks alone and depressed at the bar.
Oh, leave the pile.
Yeah. Looking a bit down. What's the matter?
I don't want to talk about it.
He wanders off once again, setting things up perfectly for a sequel. But sadly, a sequel never came. I blame Microsoft for that, but perhaps that's a topic for a different video. So that was Conker's Bad Fur Day, a game ahead of its time, released at an inopportune time, and mostly forgotten about in today's gaming climate. But was it a bad game? Not in the slightest. Aside from some janky controls and dated shooting mechanics, Conker's Bad Fur Day is still a masterpiece of comedic storytelling in video games, and probably the best looking game that was ever released for the Nintendo 64. It never takes itself too seriously. They set out to tell a goofy story with lots of laughs and fun, raunchy humor, constantly changing gameplay, and that's exactly what they achieved. It's a game that you can play over and over and still have a fun time with, and a lot of that is attributed to the hilarious characters we met along the way, the witty dialogue, and the excellent voice acting. Throughout the story, the game is never afraid to try something new, and then discard it when it's served its purpose. Sure, there's sections of repetition, but the game more than makes up for that with the stronger moments. The creator of Conker, Chris Seavor, has stated that he's no longer interested in making a sequel to the game, and has moved on to other things, which is understandable, but man do I still hunger for another adventure. Maybe someday. Maybe someday. So what do you think? Is Conker's Bad Fur Day a masterpiece? Is it overrated? Or something in between? Let me know down in the comments. This is the first video I've made like this on this channel, but there's going to be a lot more long-form game critiques coming shortly. So if that's your thing, feel free to subscribe. Until then, take care, thanks for watching, and I'll see ya.